Hello, welcome back. It's mid-June and it's time to plant the dahlias out, and I've already covered how I lift and store them for winter and how I plant them in their pots in springtime, but now it's time to plant them in the ground so that we get a fabulous display of blooms throughout late summer and into autumn. If you've followed me for a while, you know that I love my dahlias because they're just such a great flower to grow because they've bloomed for so many months, and you can cut them and pick them time and time again, share them with your friends and your family, and you might pay a couple of pounds for a tuber or grow your own from seed, and they're just so worth their money. And I'll always be growing dahlias. I grow a range of dinner plate dahlias and also some single flowering ones which are better for the bees, and I just really love dahlias. So in this video I'll show you how I pinch out my dahlias, how I plant them, and also what I'm going to be planting them with, because I've got a few different areas that I'm going to be planting up today, and lots of other plants that are going to go in there with them. And if I get time, I'll also show you how I plant them up in containers. So what is pinching out and why do we do it? Pinching out is basically a term to describe removing the top main growth of the plant, and what that will do is encourage more side shoots to shoot off from the main stem just above the leaf node where you cut. And when you get more shoots, that means more flowers. You're going to have a much bushier plant that's a bit more stockier, more sturdy, resistant to the wind, and also it means more flowers, and who doesn't want more flowers? Also, when you pinch out your dahlia flowers, the side shoots that grow more flowers are on thinner stems, which is actually a good thing, because if you cut and pick your flowers for flower arranging, making bouquets and sharing them, the stems are just a lot thinner, and sometimes if you leave the main stem uncut, it grows really, really tall on a really thick stem, and you don't really want to be making a bouquet or putting a flower in a vase arrangement that has a really thick stem. So how do you do it? Well, you grab your nice clean sharp pair of secateurs, and we're going to cut right above this little node here. So there's one pair of leaves down here at the base, but we're going to go up to the second pair right here and just cut it off like that. Now, some of these aren't actually established enough to cut them yet, so I might leave that one. This is actually one of my weakest dahlias, so it's not the best example to show you, but let's go over a few more. So this one here is Waltzing Matilda, which is actually a good one to grow in a container. It's a single flower, so great for the pollinators, and you can see this one's growing on one shoot. I think this is actually a cutting that I took. A division. I split the tuber in half this spring, so this is probably the first time that this little segment of tuber is going to bloom. So we've only got one shoot rather than the others that have multiple stems. But if you look closely, there are lots of side shoots that are just raring to go. It's really bushy down there. So what we're going to do is snip it real close. You got to be pretty brave when you do this, because it feels like you're killing your plant, but honestly doing this is really going to benefit you and your dahlias, because you're going to get so many more blooms. Now how about this one here? This is, which one is it? Zunder Mystery Fox, which is a bright orange pompon variety, which I really love. And it's got quite a lot of stems, and I'm just going to cut them right back. So again, just above a pair of leaves, and if you're not feeling brave enough, you can just do it to some of the stems or some of your dahlias and see how you get on. It will delay the blooming by a few weeks, and judging by the cold spring that we've had this year, I think the dahlias are going to be late anyway this year. So I might just do it to, a couple of them. But actually no, let's just go for it. I just know that they're going to be better in the long run, and then we'll get lots more side shoots. And you want to make sure you've got enough leaf coverage for the plant still to grow and photosynthesize. You don't want to be doing this too early on. And the reason we grow them in pots to start with is to build up a good strength and vigour and resistance to slugs, because over here in the UK, slugs are the enemy because they really do like to chomp on dahlias. I get away pretty lucky, to be honest. I don't have too much of a problem with them on my plot. I know a lot of other people do though. So yeah, we want nice big strong plants before we plant them in the ground. But yeah, we're going to pinch and plant them at the same time today. You can always pinch them, you know, weeks before you plant them out if your plants are already big and established enough. So I've got a few more to do and then we'll move on to the planting. When you've got all the tops of all of your dahlias cut, you may be wondering if you can root these as cuttings. Generally the answer is no, because the stem has actually got a hollow tube there and it won't be able to root. If you want to do cuttings from your dahlias, you're best off taking a cutting straight from the dahlia itself, and if you can include a little bit of the tuber, then that's great. So yeah, that's a whole different topic that, oh, ladybird, that I won't be covering today. But no, generally you cannot root your cuttings because they won't root. Now this dahlia here I actually planted already, and I've also already cut off the top and pinched it out. And can you see there, it would have been quite a thick stem. I cut that right back just above this pair of leaves, and now those two side shoots are already growing and they'll soon shoot right up very quickly. So we're down here in front of my shed, and this bed here is where I grew all of my straw flowers last year. But I'm going to mix things up a bit and we're going to have a few different plants in here, but the main attraction will be the dahlias because I have too many of them this year. I divided more, so I need to find more room for them. So we're going to have a mixture of dahlias, but also I'm going to put in there as well some cosmos, some of the Panicum elegans frosted explosion grass that I grew last year, and I've also got some white straw flowers as well to dot in between. But going back to the dahlias, we know that you should plant them in a sunny spot, but when should you plant them out? And obviously this depends on your location and your growing conditions, but here in the UK I always wait until the nighttime temperatures are above 10 degrees C, because they like warm conditions, and if it drops below that they're going to sulk, they're going to struggle, they're not going to like it, and it will take them a while to really get going again. I also wait until the plants are quite established in their pots. The reason we grow them in pots is because it helps give them a good start and get lots of leafy growth before we put them out. One of our main pests in the UK are slugs and snails, and slugs really do like dahlia leaves, so we want a nice bushy plant before we put it out so that if it does get nibbled a little bit, it'll still be okay. In terms of the soil, it should be quite free draining, but you know, they would grow really well in clay soil because that's got all the nutrients that they love. Yeah, they're not too fussy really, but if it is quite sandy and loose, you will need to water them quite a bit more. When it comes to the planting distance, it kind of depends on which dahlia it is that you're growing. So I check the specifications on the variety that you have, because some of them can grow much taller and wider than others. But as a general rule, I distance mine about 2 foot apart. And a little trick that I like to do is cut down a stick to the required distancing, and when you've placed out all of your dahlias, just make sure that they are the correct distance apart by using this as a guide between them, and then, you know, spreading them out accordingly. When you're planting your dahlias, you don't want to be planting them too deep or too proud either. I tend to keep the surface level of the compost the same as the soil, so the tuber itself is only just below the surface, but obviously I'm burying it quite deep because there's already a good root system established on these plants. You want to be really careful when you're handling the dahlias because the roots are very fragile, so I tend to tip them up upside down and let them fall out of their pots quite naturally. Make sure you catch them around the base of the stems. Don't break those stems, whatever you do. Now that the dahlias are out, I'm actually going to dot some of these other little flowers in between. I've got the cosmos, the grass and the straw flowers as well, and it's great because these flowers and grass have a different type of foliage to the dahlias. The dahlias have a really wide, broad leaf, whereas these have quite feathery or thin, strappy leaves. So it's going to add a nice bit of contrast. So it's going to be really interesting on the eye. And obviously the grass will help break up and loosen all of that big leaf and big flower when it comes out. And some of these cosmos actually I can also pinch out above that second leaf, the first true leaf actually, and that's just going to help create a more bushy plant again with more flowers. So I'm actually just going to take just the tops off of these like so, and I'm just going to use my nails for this one because I can. The stems are still quite thin, so it's literally just that top bit of foliage. I'm going to pinch and remove it, and then we'll get lots more side shoots from the centre there. If you're in a situation where you've just literally found a dahlia tuber and you're not sure what to do with it, just plant it. Plant it now. Look, see, this one's got shoots on it and they're going to grow. So you've got nothing to lose by just stick it in the ground and waiting to see what happens. Now then, what if you want to plant a dahlia in a container? Now this quite tall pot here is one that I grew a lot of my spring bulbs in. We had a succession of pansies followed by some tulips of different varieties. Now I've let the tulips go over, the foliage has all died back, so now I can lift what's in here, leave that to dry, store the bulbs if I want to, or plant them in the ground, and I can replant this pot with my dahlias. Now when you're choosing a dahlia for your containers, it's best to stick with the shorter varieties, and the Sarah Raven website has a good guide on varieties to try for pots, because a lot of the dinner plate dahlias, they're going to get really big, really tall. The tuber system gets quite large as well, and some of them just really aren't suitable for pots. So the one that I've chosen here is called Skipper's Bronze. It's a single flowering dahlia, so that means it's got one ring of petals on the outside and a nice big open centre, which means it's great for the pollinators. And this one has really dark foliage, and something I like to do is to plant the dahlia in the centre and then put some trailing bedding plants around the outside edge. Now I know this pot is quite dry, so I'm actually just going to lift out what's in here. Wow, look at that. See all those roots. Now the top section of compost, we should still have quite a bit of nutrients in it. And you can either replace it with completely new compost or reuse a little bit if you want to save your compost. I know that there's a layer of chicken wire in this because that's what I do to protect my tulip bulbs from the squirrels. So actually I'm just going to start afresh and put this aside. So now I've got a nice empty pot. The first thing I'm going to do is make a nice gritty mixture. So in this tub here I've got a load of grit, horticultural grit, And what that's going to do is add really good drainage. These tubers could really rot if we have a particularly wet summer. And also you've got to think about what you're going to do in terms of winter storage. You're going to leave them in the pots, put them somewhere a bit drier, or lift them completely and take them inside. So I'm going to put some good multi-purpose peat-free compost into this mix and make a nice gritty mixture first. You can also add some perlite if you like. That'll also give it a bit of aeration. So there we've got a nice gritty mixture. I'm going to start filling the pot. It doesn't matter if I have to add more. I really want the bottom section to have more drainage because that's where the water's going to end up. It's now at about the right level for the dahlia, and my dahlia here is grown in quite a small 2-litre pot. Nope, that one's a 3-litre pot. And you want the level of this compost to be the same as the height. We don't want to be burying it too deep, remember. So it's just a case of popping it in and surrounding it by compost and packing it in. And then make sure we give it a good firming in, make sure there's good contact between those roots and the compost, leaving a little bit of a rim because I may add some bedding to go around the outside at a later date. And also you want to leave a good rim around the edge for when you're watering as well. But for today, that will do nicely. So that's all of the dahlias now planted, and I'm so glad that they're all out. A little bit later than usual, but you know, I got a feeling that they're all going to start blooming a bit late anyway because of the way that the seasons are running so far this year. I'm going to make sure I water them in well over the next few weeks so they get nice and established and they get their roots down, and then I'll stake them when they get a little bit taller. I can always do a separate video on that if you want to see how I do it. But yes, thanks very much for watching. I'd love to know in the comments what's your favourite dahlia. Mine's the Wizard of Oz, unless I've got a few new varieties in here this year, so we shall see. Perhaps we'll have a new contender. But yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again next time.